Picture this: a peaceful day in a small town, a gentle breeze rustling through the olive trees. A man named Jonah is just enjoying the quiet rhythm of life, maybe sipping some cool water without a care in the world. It's one of those perfect, unremarkable days. But then, something happens that is anything but unremarkable. In the stillness, a voice echoes, not from any person nearby, but from somewhere beyond. A voice that is powerful, clear, and utterly unmistakable. It's the voice of God. Now, you might think hearing the voice of God would be this incredible, uplifting moment. A divine honor, right? For Jonah, it was complicated. This wasn't just a friendly check-in. It was a direct command, a mission of immense weight. God told Jonah to go to the great city of Nineveh, a place known for its wickedness, and to speak out against it. Nineveh was a massive, powerful city, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, and let's just say they weren't exactly friendly neighbors. Being sent there as a lone prophet to deliver a message of doom, it felt like a death sentence. So what does Jonah do? Does he say, "Yes, Lord, I'm on my way"? Not exactly. Instead, a storm of turmoil erupts inside him. Fear, doubt, and maybe even a little bit of defiance. He's a prophet, yes, but he's also human. And this heavenly invitation, this divine calling, was terrifying. It wasn't just a difficult task, it felt impossible. It's a very human reaction, isn't it? When we're faced with something huge, something that pulls us way out of our comfort zone, our first instinct is often not to leap, but to run. And that's precisely what Jonah did. He decided he was going to get as far away from Nineveh and from this mission as humanly possible. He headed down to the port of Joppa, found a ship sailing to Tarshish, which was in the complete opposite direction. Pretty much the edge of the known world at the time, paid his fare and hopped on board. He thought that by putting physical distance between himself and the source of his calling, he could escape it. He went down into the ship, hoping to hide, to disappear among the cargo and the other passengers, and just sail away from his problems. But here is a lesson that Jonah is about to learn the hard way. You couldn't outrun your destiny. You can't hide from a calling that's meant for you. While Jonah was trying to find peace below deck, God was preparing a storm on the sea above. A storm so fierce, so violent, that even the seasoned sailors were terrified. The ship was being tossed around like a toy, on the verge of breaking apart. They started throwing cargo overboard to lighten the load, desperately praying to their own gods. But nothing worked. The storm just raged on, a direct response to Jonah's disobedience. Meanwhile, where's Jonah? He's fast asleep in the bottom of the ship. It's almost comical. The world is ending topside, and he's sleeping through it, trying to escape his reality, even in his dreams. The ship's captain, frantic, finds him and yells, "How can you be sleeping? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish." So Jonah is dragged back into the chaos. The sailors, realizing this isn't a normal storm, decide to cast lots to find out who is responsible for this divine anger. And guess who the lot falls on? Of course it falls on Jonah. The game is up. Jonah confesses everything. He tells them he's a Hebrew, that he worships the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. And then he drops the bombshell. He's running away from this very God. The sailors are even more terrified now. They ask him, "What have you done? And what should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us?" Jonah, realizing the mess he's created, gives them the only solution he can think of. "Pick me up and throw me into the sea," he says, "and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you." Even in this moment, the sailors show a surprising amount of compassion. They don't want to throw him overboard. They try to row back to land, fighting against the waves, but it's no use. The sea just gets rougher and rougher. Finally, with no other choice, they pray to Jonah's God, asking for forgiveness for what they are about to do. And then they pick Jonah up and throw him into the raging sea. Instantly, the storm stops. The wind dies down, the waves become calm, and an eerie silence falls over the water. The sailors are left in absolute awe and terror, and they make vows to Jonah's God. But what about Jonah? Sinking into the dark, cold depths of the sea, it seems like his story is over. His attempt to escape has led to what looks like certain death. But God wasn't finished with him yet. Just as Jonah is about to be swallowed by the abyss, God sends a giant fish to swallow him instead. For 3 days and 3 nights, Jonah is inside the belly of this great fish. It's in this dark, slimy, impossible place that Jonah finally has his moment of clarity. He prays, he repents, finally understands that he can't run, and he acknowledges God's power and mercy. After 3 days, the fish spits Jonah out onto dry land, right back where he needed to be, ready to finally head to Nineveh. This incredible story is about so much more than a man and a big fish. It's a powerful lesson about running from our purpose. We all have things we're called to do, big or small, and sometimes they scare us. We try to run, to hide, to sail to our own personal Tarshish. But Jonah's journey teaches us that true peace isn't found in escape, but in surrender. It's in facing our fears and trusting that even when we ree in the belly of the whale, there is a plan and a purpose for our lives. Thanks so much for watching with me today. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into timeless tales. Until next time, take care. Have you ever felt like you've been asked to do the impossible? I mean, something so big, so scary, that your first instinct is just to run the other way? Well, let me tell you about a man who knew that feeling all too well. His name was Jonah. The story starts with God, the Lord of hosts, in his infinite wisdom, choosing Jonah for a task of extreme importance. This wasn't just any regular assignment. The mission was to go and preach repentance in Nineveh. Now, to understand the weight of this command, you have to know what Nineveh was like back then. It was the most feared and infamous city of its time, the capital of the mighty Assyrian Empire. Think of it as the ultimate supervillain headquarters. Asking Jonah to go to Nineveh was like sending someone into the heart of hostile territory and telling them to ask for a complete and radical change in behavior. It's no wonder that a wave of fear washed over the prophet's spirit at that moment. After all, Nineveh didn't just have a bad reputation. Its notoriety for violence, cruelty, and wickedness was known far and wide. The Assyrians were infamous for their brutal military tactics and their complete disregard for human life. They were the terror of the ancient world. Just picture Jonah. He gets this divine instruction: go to that great city Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. Can you imagine the thoughts racing through his mind? Me? Go to Nineveh? The place where they impale their enemies? The city that revels in destruction? They'll never listen. They'll probably kill me before I even finish my first sentence. His fear was completely understandable. He was being asked to confront a lion in its own den. And what does Jonah do? He does what many of us might do when faced with overwhelming fear. He runs. He heads down to the port of Joppa, finds a ship heading to Tarshish, which was in the complete opposite direction of Nineveh pays the fare, and gets on board. He was trying to flee from the presence of the Lord, trying to escape this terrifying calling. He thought that if he could just put enough distance, enough ocean between himself and God's command, maybe he could just forget about it. But here is a crucial lesson from Jonah's story. You couldn't outrun your purpose. The Lord wasn't about to let Jonah off the hook that easily. So, God sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. The sailors, seasoned veterans of the sea, were terrified. They started throwing cargo overboard to lighten the ship, each one crying out to their own God. And where was Jonah during all this chaos? He was fast asleep down in the hold of the ship. The ship's captain found him and couldn't believe it. How can you be sleeping? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish. The sailors then decided to cast lots to find out who was responsible for this calamity. And, of course, the lot fell on Jonah. They surrounded him, demanding answers. Who are you? Where do you come from? What is your occupation? Why has this happened? Finally, Jonah confesses, I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. He then tells them that he's running away from God. The sailors were even more terrified. The storm was getting worse and worse. What should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us? They asked. Jonah's answer is shocking. He tells them to throw him into the sea. He knew he was the cause of the storm, and he was willing to sacrifice himself to save the innocent sailors. So, after a brief, desperate prayer, they picked him up and hurled him into the raging waters. And immediately the sea grew calm. The sailors were filled with awe and made vows to Jonah's God. But this wasn't the end for Jonah. In fact, it was just the beginning of a very strange and powerful detour. The Lord provided a great fish to swallow Jonah, and he was inside that fish for 3 days and 3 nights. In the darkness, in the belly of the beast, Jonah finally had his moment of clarity. He prayed. He repented. Acknowledged God's power and his own foolishness. He realized he couldn't escape, and he finally surrendered to God's will. After 3 days, the fish vomited Jonah out onto dry land, and then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. This time, Jonah obeyed. He went to Nineveh, a city so large it took 3 days to cross, and he delivered God's message. 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. What happened next was a miracle nobody, especially not Jonah, expected. The Ninevites believed God. From the king down to the lowest person, they declared a fast, put on sackcloth, and sat in dust as a sign of repentance. When God saw what they did and how they had turned from their evil ways, he had compassion and did not bring upon them the destruction he had threatened. Jonah's story is a powerful reminder that God's plans are often bigger and more mysterious than we can understand. It teaches us about courage, obedience, and the incredible, boundless nature of God's mercy, which extends even to those we might consider our greatest enemies. It's a call to trust Him, even when the path He sets before us seems terrifying. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Ever feel like you've been asked to do something you really don't want to do? Maybe it's a tough conversation you need to have or a big project at work that seems impossible. You just want to run away and pretend it doesn't exist? Well, you're not alone. Let's talk about a guy who took this feeling to the absolute extreme, the prophet Jonah. The story starts simply enough. God gives Jonah a mission. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. Now, you might think a prophet would be like, okay on it, but Jonah's reaction was quite the opposite. It was like, nope, not doing it. Why the hesitation? Well, Nineveh was the capital of Assyria, a major enemy of Israel at the time. The Ninevites were known for their brutality. To Jonah, being sent to Nineveh was like being sent into the lioness den to tell the lions they were bad. He probably thought they would either ignore him, or, more likely, things would end very badly for him. Plus, there was another layer. Jonah suspected that if he did go, and the Ninevites actually listened and repented, God in His mercy would forgive them. And Jonah did not want his enemies to be forgiven. He wanted them to face justice. So Jonah came up with a plan. It's a really bad plan. Instead of heading east towards Nineveh, he decided to go west, as far west as he could possibly go. He went down to the port of Joppa, found a ship heading to Tarshish, paid the fare, and hopped on board. Now, where is Tarshish? Scholars believe it was likely in modern-day Spain, literally on the other side of the known world from Nineveh. Jonah's plan was simple: get as far away from Nineveh as possible. And maybe, just maybe, he could get away from God's call. It's a very human reaction, isn't it? When faced with something overwhelming, our instinct can be to flee. Jonah thought that by putting physical distance between himself and the mission, he could somehow escape the command. He was essentially trying to outrun the omnipresent. He went down to the port, down into the ship, and then down into the deepest part of the ship to sleep, trying to hide himself from his responsibility. It's like he was thinking, out of sight, out of mind. But as we all know, you can't really run from your problems. And you certainly can't run from God. Jonah was about to learn this lesson in a very dramatic way. He thought he was sailing away to freedom, but he was actually sailing straight into the biggest storm of his life, both literally and figuratively. His attempt to escape his calling was about to backfire spectacularly, leading to an encounter with a great fish and a journey he never could have imagined. This part of the story is so relatable because it shows us that even people chosen for great things can be filled with fear, prejudice, and a desire to run away. Jonah wasn't a superhero. He was a flawed human being just like us. He tried to take control of his own destiny and ignore the divine plan. But what happens when our plans collide with a will much greater than our own? Jonah's journey into the belly of the ship, and soon into the belly of something much larger, is a powerful reminder that avoidance is never the answer. The only way out is through. What do you think of Jonah's decision? Have you ever tried to run from something you knew you were supposed to do? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that like button. and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Thanks for watching. With a racing heart and trembling hands, Jonah scrambled towards the nearest port. He was desperate, looking for any ship, any vessel that could carry him far, far away. Imagine the scene, the bustling docks, the salty air thick with the smell of fish and tar, the cacophony of sailors shouting and waves crashing against the wooden piers. Amidst all this chaos, there's Jonah, a man on the run. His haste was obvious to anyone who saw him, a clear sign of the storm brewing, not on the sea, but within his own soul. He was in a state of complete mental turmoil, utterly confused. What was he running from? A command? A calling from the very creator of the universe? God had spoken to him. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. A straightforward mission, it would seem, but Jonah didn't see it that way. Nineveh was the capital of Assyria, a nation known for its brutality and a sworn enemy of his people. To go there and preach repentance felt like an impossible, even a suicidal task. Fear, and perhaps a bit of prejudice, gripped his heart. He couldn't bring himself to do it. He wouldn't. So, he decided to flee, to run in the opposite direction. God said go east to Nineveh, so Jonah went west, towards Tarshish. In his panicked mind, he somehow convinced himself that he could outrun God. He believed he could find a place on earth where the presence of the Almighty could unreach him. It's a thought that seems almost laughable to us now, right? How can a mere mortal hide from the one who fashioned the mountains, who set the stars in their courses, and who knows every thought before it's even formed? But in that moment of sheer panic and disobedience, Jonah's logic was clouded. His fear was so overwhelming that it blinded him to this fundamental truth. He found a ship bound for Tarshish, a place on the very edge of the known world at that time. He paid his fare, probably without much haggling, just wanting to get on board and disappear. As he stepped onto the deck, he might have felt a fleeting sense of relief. The ship pulled away from the dock, the coastline of his homeland receding into the distance. He was finally on his way, leaving his divine assignment behind. He went down into the hold of the ship, found a corner, and fell into a deep sleep, exhausted from his emotional and physical sprint. He thought he had escaped. He thought he was safe. But you can't put an ocean between yourself and God. While Jonah slept, the Lord sent a great wind on the sea. A violent storm erupted, so furious that the ship was in danger of breaking apart. The seasoned sailors, men who had spent their lives on the water, were terrified. They'd never seen anything like it. They cried out to their own gods. They threw cargo overboard to lighten the ship, doing everything they knew to do in a crisis. But this was no ordinary storm. This was a storm with a purpose. It was a storm with a name on it, Jonah. The captain, desperate, found Jonah fast asleep. "How can you be sleeping?" he shouted. "Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish." So Jonah was dragged back into the drama he had tried so hard to escape. The sailors, suspecting this wasn't a natural disaster, decided to cast lots to find out who was responsible for their calamity. And who do you think the lot fell on? Of course it fell on Jonah. The secret was out. All eyes turned to him. "Tell us," they demanded, "who are you? What is your occupation? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you?" Cornered and exposed, Jonah finally confessed. "I am a Hebrew," he said, "and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." The moment he said it, the sailors were even more terrified. They understood. This wasn't just any god. This was the God who controlled the very sea that was about to swallow them. "What have you done?" they cried, realizing he was fleeing from his God. Jonah knew there was only one way to calm the storm he had created. "Pick me up and throw me into the sea," he told them, "and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you." Jonah's story is such a powerful reminder for all of us. How often do we try to run from things we're called to do? Maybe it's not a city like Nineveh, but a difficult conversation, a step of faith, or an act of forgiveness. We think that if we just ignore it or run in the opposite direction, the problem will go away. But as Jonah learned in the belly of a fish, you can run, but you can't hide from your purpose. His journey didn't end in the sea. It was just beginning. It took a storm and a great fish to turn him around, but eventually he found his way back to God's plan. It's a message of hope, showing that no matter how far we run, God's grace and purpose can always find us and bring us back. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. See you in the next video. Have you ever tried to run away from something? It's not just physically running, but trying to escape a responsibility, a difficult conversation, or a calling you felt you just couldn't handle. It's a very human thing to do. We think if we can just get far enough away, put enough distance between ourselves and the problem, it will simply disappear. Today, we're diving into one of the most famous stories of someone who tried exactly that. A man named Jonah. Imagine this. Jonah has just received a message, a divine command, to go to the great city of Nineveh and speak out against its wickedness. This was a daunting, terrifying task. Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, known for its brutality. For Jonah, a prophet from Israel, this was like being asked to walk into the lion's den and tell the lions they were behaving badly. So what does he do? He runs. He heads in the complete opposite direction, down to the port city of Joppa. Picture the scene at the port. It's bustling with activity. The air is thick with the smell of salt, fish, and tar. Sailors are shouting, merchants are haggling, and the sound of waves lapping against the wooden hulls of ships fills the air. Amidst this chaos, Jonah is a man on a mission, but his mission is one of escape. His eyes scan the horizon, searching for any vessel that can take him far, far away from his duty. And then he sees it. Ship, sails being readied, its crew making final preparations. The sign reads, bound for Tarshish, Tarshish, Darshish. For Jonah, this name must have sounded like salvation. In the ancient world, Tarshish was the furthest known point to the west, likely in modern-day Spain. It was the edge of the known world. To go to Tarshish was to go as far away as humanly possible from Nineveh. It was the perfect escape route. Without a moment's hesitation, Jonah pays his fare. He doesn't haggle, he doesn't ask questions, he just wants on that ship. The price of the ticket was probably steep, but for Jonah, the price of peace of mind, the price of escaping his fear was worth any amount of silver. As he steps onto the deck, a wave of relief probably washed over him. He made it. The ship pulls away from the dock, the shoreline of his homeland slowly receding into the distance. With every wave, he was putting more distance between himself and the terrifying call he was trying to ignore. He might have found a quiet corner on the ship, perhaps down in the cargo hold, surrounded by bales of goods and the gentle rocking of the sea. He likely thought, I'm safe now, I'm free. He was finally out of reach, or so he believed. But here's the crucial part of the story, the part that speaks to all of us when we try to run. You can run from a place, you can run from people, but you can't run from your purpose. Jonah was on a ship, sailing on a vast sea, but he was never truly alone. He thought the physical distance would solve his problem, but the real journey was just beginning. The calm sea he was sailing on was about to transform into a terrifying tempest, and his hiding place in the belly of the ship would soon be exchanged for a much stranger, much darker confinement. This moment of false security, of Jonah believing he had successfully outsmarted his destiny, is so relatable. How often do we make a decision to avoid something difficult, and for a short while, feel that same sense of relief? We change jobs, move to a new city, or end a relationship, thinking we've escaped the core issue. But often, the real challenge isn't external, it's internal. It has a way of following us, no matter how far we travel. Jonah's journey to Tarshish wasn't the end of his story. It was the dramatic beginning of a much bigger adventure. It was a journey that would teach him, and us, that you can't run from a call that's meant for you. The challenges he was about to face were far greater than anything he could have imagined at the port of Joppa. He was running from a difficult task, only to sail directly into an impossible situation. And it's in that impossible situation that he would finally learn his most important lesson. What happens next is a whirlwind of storms, lots being cast, and an encounter with a great fish that has fascinated people for centuries. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next part of Jonah's incredible journey. See you next time. Have you ever tried to run away from something you knew you were supposed to do? Maybe it was a tough conversation, a big responsibility, or just a feeling deep down that you were meant for something more. Well, today we re-diving into the story of a man who took running away to a whole new level. This is the incredible journey of Jonah, the reluctant prophet. Our story starts with a simple, yet profound, idea. Sometimes we think we're cleverly dodging our destiny, when in reality, we're walking right into the very plan laid out for us. This was exactly the case for Jonah. The word of the Lord came to him with a clear command. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. Now, Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, a powerful and feared enemy of Jonah's people. To go there and condemn them felt like walking into the lion's den. It was a terrifying, seemingly impossible task. So what did Jonah do? He did what many of us might do when faced with something overwhelming. He ran. But Jonah didn't just run to the next town over. He booked passage on a ship heading to Tarshish, which was in the opposite direction of Nineveh, about as far away as he could possibly get in the known world. He was literally trying to flee to the ends of the earth to escape the presence of the Lord. As the ship pulled away from the shore, you can almost feel the sense of relief washing over him. The wind in the sails, the smell of the salt in the air, the coastline of his homeland shrinking in the distance. He probably thought, I did it. I'm free. He had managed to sidestep his divine mission. Little did he know, he wasn't escaping his destiny. He was sailing right into it. The real adventure was just about to begin. Out on the open sea, a furious storm suddenly erupted. This wasn't just bad weather, it was a supernatural tempest that threatened to tear the ship apart. The seasoned sailors, who had seen their fair share of storms, were terrified. They threw cargo overboard to lighten the ship, and each man cried out to his own God for help. But the storm only raged on. And where was Jonah during all this chaos? He was fast asleep in the hold of the ship. The captain found him and woke him up, urging him to pray to his God. The sailors, desperate to find the cause of this divine wrath, decided to cast lots to see who was responsible. And guess who the lot fell on? Of course, it was Jonah. They confronted him, asking who he was and what he had done. Jonah confessed, I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. He admitted he was running from God. The sailors were even more terrified now. They knew they were in the middle of a divine showdown. What should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us? They asked. Jonah's response is startling. He told them to throw him into the sea, and then it would be calm. He knew he was the cause of the storm, and was willing to sacrifice himself to save the innocent sailors. After trying their best to row back to land and failing, the sailors reluctantly did as Jonah said. They prayed for forgiveness and threw him overboard. Instantly, the raging sea grew calm. The men on the ship were filled with awe and made vows to Jonah's God. But for Jonah, his ordeal was far from over. As he sank into the dark, churning waters, it seemed like the end. But God had other plans. The Lord provided a great fish to swallow Jonah, and he was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Can you imagine? In the dark, watery belly of a giant sea creature, Jonah finally had nowhere left to run. It was in this moment of absolute despair and isolation that he finally turned back to God. He prayed a beautiful prayer of repentance and thanksgiving, acknowledging God's power and mercy. He realized that salvation comes from the Lord alone. After 3 days, the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. Soaked, humbled, and probably smelling terrible, Jonah was given a second chance. The word of the Lord came to him again, the exact same command. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. This time, Jonah obeyed. His journey teaches us a powerful lesson. We can try to run from our calling, but we can't outrun a purpose that is meant for us. Sometimes it's the storms and the belly of the fish moments in our own lives that finally get us to stop running and listen. What are you running from? Maybe it's time to turn around and face your Nineveh. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. And subscribe for more content that explores the deeper meanings in these ancient tales. See you next time. It's an undeniable truth. We can try to run from a calling, but that calling will never stop pursuing us. Jonah was about to discover this reality in a rather unusual way. And at this moment, it is a good time for us to reflect. How often do we also try to avoid the responsibilities that life presents us? Whether it's in our professional, academic, or personal lives. We often find ourselves facing a challenging task, maybe from a boss, a teacher, or even just a promise we made to ourselves. And instead of facing it head-on, what do? We look for excuses. We procrastinate. We try to find a way out. Think about it. That big project at work you keep putting off until the last minute. The difficult conversation you need to have with a loved one, but keep avoiding. Or even that new skill you know you should learn, but tell yourself you're just too busy for. These are our modern-day Ninevehs. They are the tasks that demand our courage, our effort, and our commitment. But like Jonah, we sometimes choose to buy a ticket to Tarshish, a destination in the complete opposite direction. We might distract ourselves with endless social media scrolling, binge-watching shows, or filling our calendars with less important tasks, all to avoid the one thing that truly matters. Jonah's story begins with a very clear and direct command from God. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, a powerful and fearsome enemy of Israel. Being sent there was like being asked to walk into the lion's den. It was a dangerous, seemingly impossible mission. So, what did Jonah do? He didn't argue or negotiate, he simply fled. He went down to the port of Joppa, found a ship heading for Tarshish as far away as he could possibly get paid the fare, and went aboard, hoping to escape from the presence of the Lord. This part of the story is so relatable. How many times have we chosen the path of least resistance? We convince ourselves that if we ignore the problem, it will simply disappear. But life doesn't work that way. Responsibilities don't just vanish because we choose not to look at them. In fact, running away often makes things worse. Just as Jonah's escape led to a violent storm that endangered everyone on the ship, our avoidance can create bigger problems down the line. That small task we ignored can snowball into a crisis. That conversation we avoided can lead to a breakdown in a relationship. The bill we didn't pay accrues interest and penalties. The storm in Jonah's story is a powerful metaphor for the chaos that enters our lives when we run from our duties. The sea grew more and more tempestuous. The sailors, experienced men of the sea, were terrified. They threw cargo overboard to lighten the ship. They cried out to their own gods, but nothing worked. The storm was not a random act of nature. It was a direct consequence of Jonah's disobedience. Meanwhile, where was Jonah? He had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. Oh, this isn't the peaceful sleep of a clear conscience. This is the sleep of denial. The sleep of someone trying to shut out the world and the consequences of their actions. This happens to us too. We can become numb, disengaged, or emotionally distant when we're avoiding something important. We might sleep through our own lives, going through the motions without really being present, hoping the storm will pass on its own. But the storm rarely does. Eventually, reality comes knocking. The captain of the ship found Jonah and woke him up, saying, "How can you be sleeping? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish." The sailors cast lots to find out who was responsible for this calamity. And the lot fell on Jonah. His secret was out. He could no longer hide. Confronted, he confessed everything. He told them he was a Hebrew who worshipped the Lord, the God of heaven, and that he was running away from him. The sailors were even more terrified. They knew they were caught in something far beyond a simple storm. Jonah's attempt to escape his personal calling had become a life-threatening crisis for everyone around him. This is a crucial lesson. Our avoidance doesn't just affect us. It can have a ripple effect, impacting our colleagues, our families, and our friends. When we fail to step up, someone else often has to bear the burden. When we don't do our part on a team project, our coworkers have to pick up the slack. When we avoid our responsibilities at home, our family members feel the strain. Our personal Tarshish is never a private escape. So, what's the takeaway here? The first step is recognizing when we're running. Acknowledge that feeling of dread or resistance when a new challenge appears. Instead of immediately looking for the exit, pause and consider the cost of avoidance. The path of least resistance is often a detour that leads to a much bigger storm. Facing our Ninevehs, however intimidating they may be, is the only way to find true peace and move forward. What storms are brewing in your life because of a responsibility you're avoiding? Thanks for watching. If this resonated with you, give us a like and hit that subscribe button for more content like this. See you in the next video. Have you ever tried to run away from something? Responsibility? A difficult conversation? Maybe even a calling you felt deep in your soul? If you have, then you know exactly how Jonah felt, standing on the deck of that ship. Imagine the scene. The salty spray on his face, the wind in his hair, the endless blue horizon ahead. He must have breathed a sigh of pure relief. He did it. He escaped. Nineveh, the city God had commanded him to go to, was fading into the distance, becoming just a memory. In his mind, he had successfully dodged the most daunting task of his life. He was free. He paid his fare, found a ship going in the complete opposite direction, and now he was sailing away from his problems. It's a feeling we can all relate to, right? It's that momentary bliss of believing we've outsmarted our destiny. But here's the thing about destiny, especially when it's a mission from the Creator himself. It has a way of finding you. Jonah had no clue, not the slightest inkling, that the entire universe was already conspiring against his great escape. He thought he was just a passenger on a regular ship, but he was actually the main character in a divine drama about to unfold. The calm sea he was enjoying was just the quiet before the storm, literally, because when you're trying to outrun a plan that's bigger than you, the universe doesn't just send you a gentle reminder, it sends a storm. A massive, terrifying, ship-splintering storm. The wind began to howl, the waves grew into monstrous giants, and the ship was tossed around like a toy. The experienced sailors, men who had spent their lives on the water, were terrified. They started throwing cargo overboard, praying to their own gods, doing everything they could to survive. And where was Jonah during all this chaos? Fast asleep? Down in the hold of the ship, completely oblivious. It's almost comical, isn't it? He was so convinced he had escaped his mission that he was sleeping peacefully while a supernatural tempest, sent specifically for him, raged above. He was running from a spiritual problem, but it had manifested as a very real, very physical storm. This is a powerful lesson. We can try to ignore our calling. We can try to sail in the opposite direction. We can even fall asleep and pretend it's not happening. But the storm will come. It might not be a literal storm with wind and rain. It could be a storm in our finances, our relationships, or our mental health. It's a universal principle. You can run, but you cannot hide. The things we are meant to do have a way of catching up to us. Eventually, the sailors found Jonah. They cast lots, a common practice back then to find the source of a problem. And of course, the lot fell on him. When they confronted him, he finally had to confess. "I am a Hebrew," he said, "and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." The irony is staggering. He was running from the God who created the very sea he was trying to use as his escape route. At that moment, everyone on board realized this was no ordinary storm. It was a divine intervention. Jonah knew what had to be done. He told them to throw him into the sea and the storm would stop. It was a moment of surrender. His escape plan had failed spectacularly, and now he was facing the consequences head-on. The sailors resisted at first, but finally, they did as he said. And just like that, the moment Jonah hit the water, the sea became calm. The storm vanished as quickly as it had appeared. For the sailors, it was a miracle. For Jonah, it was the end of his escape. In the beginning of a whole new, much stranger chapter, involving a giant fish. The story of Jonah is a timeless reminder. When we feel that pull, that calling to do something significant, something that might scare us, running away is never the answer. The universe will conspire to bring us back to our path. The journey might get stormy, it might get uncomfortable, it might even feel like we're being swallowed whole. But ultimately, it's about surrendering to the plan that is greater than our own fears. It teaches us that our true destination is often found not in running away, but in turning around and facing the Nineveh in our own lives. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores these timeless truths. See you in the next video. Have you ever tried to run away from something? Maybe it was a tough conversation, a big responsibility, or just a feeling you didn't want to face? We've all been there, thinking if we just ignore it, it'll go away. Well, today we re-diving into the story of a man who took this to a whole new level. His name was Jonah, and he wasn't just running from a problem. He was trying to outrun the divine. What makes Jonah's story so fascinating is that he wasn't just any ordinary guy. He was a prophet. This means he was someone who had a direct line of communication with God. He heard the divine call. He understood the messages, and he was chosen to deliver them. You'd think someone with that kind of connection would know better, right? But that's what makes this story so incredibly human. Despite his sacred role, Jonah thought he could simply say, "No thanks," and disappear. So what was the mission he was so desperate to avoid? God commanded Jonah to go to the great city of Nineveh and warn its people. Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, a place known for its wickedness and cruelty. To Jonah and to his people, the Ninevites were the enemy. The idea of going there and offering them a chance at redemption was unthinkable, maybe even offensive. So, instead of heading east toward Nineveh, Jonah went in the complete opposite direction. He made his way down to the port of Joppa, found a ship heading to Tarshish, the farthest known point in the western Mediterranean, and paid his fare to get as far away as possible. Picture the scene. Jonah boards the ship, the crew raises the anchor, and the vessel begins to pull away from the coast. With every wave, the familiar shoreline gets smaller and smaller. The ship is now entering the deep, vast waters of the Mediterranean. For a moment, Jonah might have felt a sense of relief. He'd done it. He was escaping. The wind was in the sails, and the problem was literally behind him. But deep down, can you imagine the turmoil? A mix of relief, sure, but also a growing sense of apprehension. He was a prophet of God, on a ship sailing into the unknown, running from the very presence he was meant to serve. He was trying to escape the inescapable, and as the land disappeared from view, he was about to discover that you can't run from your destiny, especially when that destiny is divinely appointed. He probably went down into the ship's hold, trying to find a quiet corner to lie down, hoping to sleep off the anxiety and the guilt. He was physically moving away, but could he really escape the voice he knew so well? The calm sea was about to give way to a storm of epic proportions, a storm that wasn't just a random act of nature, but a direct response to his disobedience. This journey wasn't leading him to freedom. It was leading him to a confrontation he never could have imagined, in the belly of a great fish. This ancient story isn't just about a stubborn prophet and a giant fish. It's about our own lives. How many times have we been called to do something difficult, something that takes us out of our comfort zone? Maybe it's forgiving someone, starting a new career, or standing up for what's right. And how often do we, like Jonah, try to find our own ship to Tarshish? We distract ourselves, we make excuses, we run in the opposite direction. But what Jonah's journey teaches us is that running is only a temporary solution. The issues we try to escape often have a way of catching up to us, sometimes in the form of a storm. These storms in our lives, the challenges, the crises, the moments where everything seems to be falling apart, are often not just punishments. They can be wake-up calls. They are opportunities to stop running, to turn around, and to face the direction we are truly meant to go. The story of Jonah is a powerful reminder that sometimes the most frightening path is the one that leads to our greatest purpose. It's a testament to second chances and the relentless nature of grace. No matter how far we run or how deep we try to hide, we are never truly out of reach. Jonah's journey into the deep was just the beginning of his journey back to his calling. Perhaps our own storms are just the beginning of our journey back to ourselves. What did you think of Jonah's attempt to flee? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into ancient wisdom. See you next time. He paid the fare and boarded a ship heading for Tarshish, seeking to escape his divine duty. A strange mix of relief and apprehension washed over him. The relief was a fleeting comfort, born from the illusion of distancing himself from a monumental responsibility. The apprehension, however, was a deep, unsettling feeling. A knot in his stomach that tightened with each league the ship sailed away from his designated path. He knew he was disobeying a command from the highest authority, and that knowledge was a heavy burden. Looking up, he noticed the sky, which had been a brilliant, cloudless blue just moments before, was beginning to change. Dark, ominous clouds gathered on the horizon, like a bruise forming on the perfect canvas of the day. They were a silent, menacing harbinger of the turmoil that was brewing, both in the heavens and within his own soul. He tried to ignore it, to convince himself it was just a natural shift in the weather. But the timing felt too significant to be a mere coincidence. As the journey pressed on, the sea, once a calm, glistening expanse, began to stir. The gentle, rhythmic lapping of waves against the hull gave way to a more agitated motion. The waves, once playful and soft, grew in size and strength. They began to swell, their crests turning white with foam as they became more intense, rocking the large vessel with increasing vigor. The initial gentle sway of the ship turned into a violent lurching. The other passengers, at first cheerful and oblivious, started to show signs of concern.
Ow!
Their laughter and chatter died down, replaced by nervous glances at the darkening sky and the churning sea. The sailors, seasoned men of the sea, began to shout orders, their faces etched with a grim seriousness that confirmed this was no ordinary squall. The wind, which had been a gentle breeze, now howled through the rigging, tearing at the sails with a furious, relentless force. He retreated to the ship's hold, trying to find solace in the darkness, to escape the storm he knew was his own doing. But there was no escape. The creaking of the ship's timbers, the roar of the wind, and the thunderous crash of waves against the wood were a constant, deafening reminder of his transgression. Every shudder of the vessel felt like a direct accusation. The fear among the passengers above echoed the terror in his own heart. He had tried to run, but he was learning a powerful lesson. You can never outrun your destiny, especially when it has been divinely ordained. The storm was not just around him, it was for him. It was the eye of this hurricane, the very reason for its destructive rage. The sea was not just angry, it was demanding a reckoning. Deep down, he knew the price that had to be paid. The old hands on deck, the ones with salt etched into their skin and the sea in their eyes, they knew the signs. You learn to read the sky like a book out here, and this one was telling a story none of them wanted to hear. A faint, almost imperceptible shift had happened. The sun, which moments ago had been a comforting warmth on their faces, now seemed distant, veiled behind a creeping haze. The air grew heavy, thick with an unspoken promise. They exchanged glances. A silent language passed between men who had shared countless dawns and dusks on the open water. No words were needed. The mood on the ship began to change, a subtle current of unease running through the crew. The laughter and easy chatter that had filled the afternoon air slowly faded, replaced by a focused silence. It was the quiet before the storm, and every sailor felt it in their bones. The wind was the first to declare its intentions openly. What began as a playful breeze, just enough to fill the sails and push them steadily onward, started to get an edge. It wasn't a gentle push anymore. It was a shove. Then it began to snarl, whipping loose strands of hair across faces and pulling at the corners of their jackets. Could hear it singing a menacing tune through the rigging, a high-pitched whistle that climbed in scale with each passing minute. The sea, once a rolling expanse of deep blue, started to turn a murky, agitated gray. White caps began to appear, little angry fists of foam punching at the surface, their numbers growing until the entire ocean seemed to be boiling. The ship, which had been gliding so smoothly, now began to rock with more purpose, a prelude to the violent dance that was to come. The captain, a man whose face was a roadmap of 100 voyages, stood firm at the helm. He scanned the horizon, his gaze sweeping from the darkening sky to the restless water. He didn't need a barometer to tell him what was coming. Could feel the pressure drop in the air, could taste the metallic temps of the storm on his tongue. He gave the order, his voice cutting through the rising howl of the wind, sharp and clear. All hands, prepare for the squall. The words acted like a jolt of electricity. There was no panic, no hesitation. This was what they trained for, what their experience had prepared them for. The wheel-oiled machine of the crew sprang into action, each man knowing his duty, his place in the orchestrated chaos of preparation. The great sails, which had been proudly catching the wind, were the first to come down. It was a battle against the strengthening gale. Men scrambled up the rigging, their movements deft and sure-footed despite the ship's increasing pitch and roll. They wrestled with the heavy canvas, the wind trying to tear it from their grasp like a wild beast. Below, others worked furiously on deck. Ropes were checked, knots were tightened until knuckles were white. Anything that wasn't bolted down was a potential missile in a storm. Crates, barrels, coils of rope, everything was lashed securely or hauled below deck and stowed away. The ship was being stripped for a fight, transforming from a vessel of passage into a fortress against the elements. Hatches were battened down, their heavy wooden covers slammed shut and barred, sealing the lower decks from the inevitable deluge. As the last sail was furled and the deck cleared, a strange calm fell over the crew. The frantic energy of preparation was replaced by a grim resolve. They had done all they could. Now they were at the mercy of the sea. The sky was no longer just dark. It was a bruised, angry purple, and the horizon had vanished, swallowed by the approaching wall of rain and wind. The first drops of rain began to fall, not as a gentle shower, but as cold, hard pellets that stung the skin. The wind screamed, a primal roar that seemed to shake the very timbers of the ship. The vessel groaned under the strain as the first massive wave crashed over the bow, sending a torrent of churning, icy water sweeping across the deck. The sailors braced themselves, their faces set against the spray. The storm had arrived. Their journey was no longer about reaching a destination. It was about survival, a testament to their skill, their courage, and the resilience of their ship against the awesome, untamed power of the ocean. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this story of the sea, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. The old captain stood on the deck, his weathered hand gripping the ship's rail. His eyes, accustomed to scanning the vast expanse of the sea, narrowed as he stared at the horizon. Years of navigating these waters had taught him to read the subtle language of the sky and the waves. He saw the darkening clouds gathering with unnatural speed, the playful breeze of the morning shifting into a restless, ominous wind. The sea, once a calm blue, was beginning to churn, its surface turning a murky, agitated gray. This wasn't just another squall. A cold knot formed in his stomach. This was a trial, a tempest, that would push his sturdy vessel and every soul aboard to their absolute limits. He barked orders, his voice a gravelly roar carried by the rising wind. Batten down the hatches. Secure the cargo. All hands on deck. Every sailor scrambled, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. They knew their captain's instincts were rarely wrong. Meanwhile, far below the frantic energy of the deck, in the dim, musty-smelling hold of the ship, Jonah was lost to the world. He had found a secluded corner among the crates and barrels, the gentle rocking of the ship a deceptive lullaby. He was oblivious to the darkening sky, the rising winds, and the fear gripping the men above. Perhaps he was asleep, finding a temporary escape from his own inner turmoil. Or maybe he sat in the darkness, wide awake, replaying his decision over and over. He was running, not just from the city of Nineveh, but from a call he believed was inescapable. Each league the ship sailed away from Joppa was a deliberate step away from his duty, a defiant act against the divine command that echoed in his heart. He had paid his fare, found his hiding place, and thought he could simply disappear into the anonymity of the sea. But the sea was no longer a willing accomplice in his escape. It had begun to heave and buck with a fury the captain had seldom witnessed. Waves like liquid mountains crashed over the bow, sweeping across the deck and threatening to splinter the very timbers of the ship. The wind howled a mournful, terrifying song through the rigging. The sailors, seasoned men of the sea, fought with desperate strength. They wrestled with ropes stiff with salt water, their knuckles raw, their muscles screaming in protest. They reefed the sails, trying to give the storm as little to grip as possible, but the wind tore at the canvas with monstrous force. The ship groaned under the assault. Every creak and shudder, a sound of protest against the overwhelming power of the nature. Panic began to set in. These were men who lived their lives at the mercy of the elements, but this was different. This storm felt personal, targeted. It was as if the ocean itself was angry, hunting for someone on their vessel. As the situation grew more dire, the sailors began to cry out, each to his own god. They were a diverse crew, from different lands and different faiths, and in their terror, they turned to the powers they knew. They threw offerings overboard, hoping to appease whatever angry deity was responsible for this cataclysm. Yet the storm only intensified. The captain, his face grim, knew that prayers and offerings weren't enough. There was something unnatural at play. "There's a curse on this ship," he muttered to a mate, his words nearly stolen by the gale. "This isn't a natural storm. It's looking for someone." The thought spread like wildfire among the terrified crew. They started looking at each other with suspicion. Who among them had brought this wrath upon them all? Their fear turned to a desperate search for a cause, a scapegoat. It was then that the captain remembered the passenger who had boarded so quietly, the one who had paid his fare and immediately disappeared below. "Find the passenger," he commanded. "Bring him up here." A few sailors stumbled down into the hold, their lanterns casting wild, dancing shadows on the walls. And there they found him. Jonah seemingly undisturbed by the violent chaos that was tearing their world apart. As they dragged him onto the deck, the sight that greeted him was one of utter pandemonium. The sky was a swirling vortex of black and gray, lit only by flashes of lightning. The sea was a maelstrom of white-capped fury. The faces of the sailors were pale masks of terror. And in that moment, as the wind ripped at his clothes and the salty spray stung his eyes, Jonah knew. He knew his flight was over. The storm had found him. The sea had come to claim its due, and there was nowhere left for him to run. The rocking of the vessel grew more and more intense, a violent lurch that snapped him back to the harsh reality of the present. He could feel the ship groaning under the strain, the creaking of the ancient wood, a symphony of distress. Outside, the waves, once gentle companions, were now monstrous fists pounding against the hull, their roar growing louder with every passing second. This wasn't just a squall, it was the herald of a full-blown storm. He gripped the damp railing, his knuckles white, and stared out at the horizon. The change was terrifyingly swift. One moment, there was a gray, overcast sky. The next, a suffocating darkness descended, swallowing the daylight whole. It was as if night had ambushed the afternoon, plunging the world into a premature, inky blackness. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of salt and ozone, and a chilling wind began to howl, whipping through the rigging like a tormented spirit. Then the sky tore open. A jagged spear of lightning, brilliant and blinding, ripped across the firmament. For a fleeting, terrifying instant, the entire seascape was illuminated in a ghostly, strobing light. He saw the chaos in its full, horrifying glory. The sea was no longer a flat expanse, but a writhing, mountainous terrain of churning water. Waves impossibly high, crested and crashed with unimaginable force, their white foam glowing eerily in the flash of lightning. The ship was tossed about like a child's toy, at the complete mercy of the ocean's fury. Another bolt of lightning struck, closer this time, and the thunder that followed was not a distant rumble, but an explosive crack that vibrated through his very bones. Rain began to fall, not in drops, but in solid sheets, a cold, relentless deluge that stung his skin and blurred his vision. He could barely distinguish the deck from the sea, the sky from the water. Everything was a swirling vortex of wind, water, and terrifying noise. He tried to call out, to shout for the others, but the storm devoured his voice before it could even leave his lips. The creaking of the ship's timbers escalated into a series of sharp, splintering cracks. Was the hull breaking apart? Thought sent a jolt of pure ice through his veins. He scrambled for a better hold, his feet slipping on the slick, waterlogged deck. The vessel tilted at a sickening angle, sending loose crates and ropes sliding across the deck toward the churning abyss. He saw a flash of movement near the mainmast. It was another crewmate, a young man he'd shared a meal with just hours before, now clinging desperately to a stay wire. The man's face, illuminated by the next lightning strike, was a mask of sheer terror. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second across the maelstrom of silent, shared acknowledgement of their desperate plight. The ship pitched again, this time more violently than before. He felt himself being lifted off his feet as a colossal wave crashed over the side, a solid wall of freezing water that swept across the deck with the force of a battering ram. He lost his grip, tumbling end over end, his world a disorienting blur of black water and splintered wood. The cold was a shock, stealing the air from his lungs, pulling him down into its suffocating embrace. For a moment, all was silent beneath the waves, a bizarre, muffled peace after the cacophony above. But the instinct to survive was a powerful, primal force. He fought against the pull, kicking his legs, clawing his way back toward the tumultuous surface. He broke through, gasping for air, choking on salt water. The storm was still raging, the lightning still dancing its deadly ballet across the sky. The ship was a dark, wounded silhouette, already several yards away and receding fast. He was alone, a tiny, insignificant speck in the vast, wrathful ocean. The storm had taken everything. And as another wave rose up before him, dark and immense, he knew the fight was far from over. It had only just begun. Have you ever felt truly small, completely at the mercy of something immense and powerful? Imagine this. You're on a ship, far out at sea. The sky, once a brilliant, endless blue, has turned a bruised, menacing purple. Unsettling stillness hangs in the air, the kind that feels like the world is holding its breath. Then, a flash of lightning splits the sky in two, a jagged, brilliant tear in the fabric of the heavens. It's not just a flicker, it's a full-on spectacle, illuminating the churning, darkening water for a terrifying, beautiful moment. Then comes the thunder. It's not a distant rumble. It's a deafening, bone-shaking roar that seems to come from inside your own chest. The ship itself trembles beneath your feet, a vibration that travels up your spine and rattles your teeth. Every sailor on board freezes, their faces pale in the eerie twilight. The thunder doesn't just shake the ship, it shakes their courage, their very souls. It's a raw, primal sound that reminds them just how fragile they are out here on this vast, unforgiving ocean. And then the rain begins. At first, it's just a few scattered drops, heavy and cold, splattering against the wooden deck like warning shots. You might even feel a brief moment of relief, the cool touch of water on your skin. But that relief is short-lived. In what feels like seconds, those drops multiply, merging into a relentless torrent. It's not just raining, it's a solid wall of water, a curtain so thick you can't see the bow of your own ship. The world shrinks to just a few feet around you, everything else swallowed by the gray deluge. The waves, which were merely gentle swells moments before, have become monstrous. They rise up like liquid mountains, their peaks crowned with angry white foam. They don't just rock the ship, they lift it, hold it suspended for a heart-stopping second at the crest, offering a terrifying view of the watery chaos all around, before dropping it violently into the trough below. Your stomach lurches with every plunge. Each wave threatens to be the one that finally swallows the vessel whole, pulling it down into the dark abyss. The ship is no longer a proud vessel sailing the seas. It's a toy in the hands of a giant, angry child. It's tossed from side to side, the masts groaning in protest, the rigging screaming under the strain. One moment, the deck is angled so sharply, you have to cling to whatever you can find to keep from sliding into the churning sea. The next, it lurches the other way, sending loose objects skittering across the boards. There's no rhythm, no pattern to the assault, just pure, unpredictable chaos. The wind howls like a banshee, tearing at the sails, its voice a symphony of fury that drowns out the sailors' shouts. On deck, it's a desperate battle for survival. Men, soaked to the bone and shivering, struggle to secure anything that might be torn away by the wind and waves. Ropes feel like slippery eels in their numb fingers. Their voices are lost in the storm's roar, so they communicate with frantic hand signals and desperate, wide-eyed glances. Every movement is a risk, a gamble against the heaving deck and the crashing waves that wash over it, threatening to sweep them away into the cold, dark water. Fear is a tangible thing, a cold knot in their stomachs, but it's overshadowed by the urgent, primal need to survive. Below deck, it's a different kind of hell. Air is thick with the smell of seawater, wet wood, and fear. The constant, violent motion of the ship turns the cramped quarters into a disorienting nightmare. With every roll, crates slide, barrels tumble, and the ship's timbers creak and groan as if they were about to splinter into 1,000 pieces. The sound is terrifying, a constant reminder of the immense pressure the hull is under. It's a prison of noise and motion where every creak could signal the end. Hour after hour, the storm rages on, without any sign of letting up. Time loses all meaning, measured only by the endless cycle of rising waves and crashing thunder. The men are exhausted, their muscles aching, their minds numb with fatigue and fear. Hope begins to dwindle, replaced by a grim resignation. Yet, they fight on. They fight for their ship, for their lives, for the faint glimmer of hope that the dawn might bring calmer seas. In the heart of the storm, surrounded by chaos, they find a strange sort of unity, a shared struggle against the awesome power of nature. They are no longer just sailors on a ship. They are brothers in a battle against the abyss.
Thank you so much for watching.
If you were captivated by this story of survival, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the high seas. The storm hit without warning, a furious assault of wind and water that seemed to tear at the very fabric of our world. On the deck of the ship, chaos reigned. The crew, hardened men of the sea, fought with a desperate, primal energy to maintain control. Ropes snapped like threads, and sails shredded under the relentless force of the gale. The mighty vessel, once a proud master of the waves, was now just a toy, tossed and battered by the immense power of nature. It was clear we were no longer in command. We were at the mercy of something far greater and far more terrifying. Fear was a tangible thing, a cold presence that clung to every soul on board. You could see it in the wide, stark eyes of the youngest cabin boy and in the grim, set jaw of the seasoned captain. Faces that were usually full of life and laughter were now pale masks of tension, each line etched with the terrifying realization of our own fragility. The roar of the wind and the crashing of the waves was a constant, deafening symphony of destruction, and with every lurch of the ship, our collective breath hitched in our throats. The sea, our livelihood and our home, had turned into a monstrous enemy. In the midst of this turmoil, something extraordinary began to happen. The sailors, one by one, started to fall back on the oldest of human instincts, faith. Following ancient maritime traditions passed down through generations, they began to cry out to their respective gods. It started as a low murmur, a collection of desperate whispers, but soon it grew into a powerful chorus that rose above the storm's fury. Men from different corners of the world with different beliefs and different tongues were suddenly united by a shared fear and a flickering ember of hope. It was an unforgettable scene. A sailor from the Mediterranean coast clutched a worn wooden cross, his lips moving in a frantic Latin prayer. Beside him, a Norseman with a braided beard raised his face to the sky, his powerful voice calling out to Odin and Thor, begging for the strength to endure. Another, from the distant east, knelt on the slick, heaving deck, chanting a prayer to the sea goddesses of his homeland. Their voices, each a unique thread of faith, wove together into a single, desperate plea. They were no longer just sailors. They were men, stripped bare of everything but their humanity, raising their voices in a raw, powerful supplication to the heavens. This shared moment of vulnerability created a strange and profound connection among us, how the barriers of language and creed dissolved in the face of our common peril. We were all just souls adrift in a maelstrom looking for a sign, a glimmer of salvation. The act of praying itself seemed to give them strength. It was a final act of defiance against the overwhelming power of the storm, a declaration that even in the face of oblivion, they would not surrender their hope. The prayers were a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to find solace. In unity in the darkest of times, a single unified cry for deliverance from the heart of the tempest. Thank you for watching. If you were moved by this story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more tales from the high seas. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let's see you next time.